Hi, David Taylor, or Mr Pelargonium as people like to call me. I'm back with another video. It's the end of December and it's time for stopping my Regals. So let's have a look at that. Okay, well, welcome along again. I'm back. We've just had Christmas. It's just a couple of days before the New Year celebrations. And we've actually had a window in all of the rain that the UK has had over really the last few months. The UK has been utterly saturated in rain, and it really has been bad. But the last week, since a couple of days before Christmas, day before Christmas Eve, I suppose, the rains relented and it's been relatively dry. So I've taken real advantage in stopping my Regals. Now, everybody knows, if anybody follows me from, say, this time last year, I've always had a bit of an issue with Regals and I need to stop them for the summer shows relatively earlier than you would normally. Now, normally you would stop Regals probably about 18 weeks prior to a show. I have to stop mine probably +4 or even 5 ahead of that. So I'm doing mine at the tail end of December. In fact, last year I did them in early December, primarily because I was away for a lot of December last year. But I'm doing them now. It's about 24, 25 weeks to the show. Basically just under 6 months realistically, because the national show is on the 13th of June, so I'm having to really plough into it. The one good thing that cutting back and stopping does is that it shrinks the plants down a bit, so it gives you a little bit of room. So we'll have a look around my greenhouse just a little bit later. But in the meantime, we'll get straight into stopping some Regal pelargoniums. Right, now the stopping of these Regals comes down to sort of a bit of a two-phase action. I've probably shown you this in the past in some of my other videos, but I can go through it again. It doesn't harm. I mean, I've got some really good plants actually. A number of these are the seedlings which I've spoken about over the last really the last year, realistically. I've got a number of good younger seedlings. I've got some standard show plants that I've used for a long time. But stopping the Regals, similar to any other sort of stopping regime for the plants, is just literally taking out the little tip of the growing point. And what that does, sort of regulates when it's going to flower, because what you'll get then is a lot of bursting growth from down the stems that you're taking the tips out from, and they'll bush out, and that's the whole idea of the stopping regime. Now, it also allows you to sort of reshape the plant to a certain extent, and this is probably why I need to do the stopping on my Regals a bit earlier, because if you've got a longer stem, you're going to need to push that down to sort of equalise it to make the shape nice and round. And if you've got to cut down a bit deeper, that breaking through will take that much longer. So I usually have to find that to reshape, I have to do that quite a bit. So because I don't generally do a sort of a stop in the autumn. Now, some of mine I did do this year, so a number of mine I've just had to really just do the tips. So they'll hopefully come through well on time, but it's better to have blooms ahead of a show and take them out rather than not have any that are then going to make the plant flower too late. So it's best to do it a little bit ahead of schedule rather than being too late and missing shows or missing planting flowering specimens that you want for a particular time. Right, so I'm just going to take the camera off and we'll get a bit of a closer look as to what I'm going to do. Right, well, this is one of my seedlings. It's actually grown on very well. This is a sort of compact, whiter plant that has got a small, I usually put a description on them. This has got a small, white, rounded bloom. It's actually a cross between Zophia Pope and Richie's the seed parent. And this has grown on very well actually. It's got a good balanced body. I did shape it up a little bit back in the early autumn, around about August time. And it's grown through nice and strongly, very much as you would expect Regals to do. Regals do grow very well during the winter. And so realistically, all I'm going to do initially is take the little tips out. Now, I've sort of revealed here, there's a sort of little stem break, and all I'm going to do is just nick out the top. Now, I do have to look to see that the top break, which is there, you can just see it beginning to reveal itself actually. That little stem there is going to grow relatively balanced and facing inwards towards the bulk of the plant. So I'm going to just strip that there. I mean, you could go even higher. You could pull. Now, the other thing with Regals is you get a lot of these stipules which remain tight to the little stem break. And I'm just breaking that off in this case. It doesn't hurt them to break them off. They're just little sort of stem protectors. But in this case, I'm going to cut that just above that little side shoot break that you can see coming out the top there. I think I can do this one-handed. It's not that easy, but I'm going to slice that just enough to be able to snap it across. And there we can see that. That's just broken open where I put my knife, and it just relatively easily snaps off. Now you can see how that sort of cut that stem, and that's a little tip stop. So there we are. That's just literally taken that tip out. Now, if you get sort of even higher, for instance, there's another one here, you can just sometimes even rub them out. I mean, I'm just going to snap that leaf off so you can see this other stem. Now here, you could just peel this inner leaf back here and just rub that little growth tip there. You could just bend it over and rub it out, which is what a lot of people do. A lot of people do that. The stopping for shows, they just literally rub them out because they can be so tall and fine that they're easily rubbed out. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go round, I'm going to, cut them out or rub them out, depending on how balanced I want to keep the plant. Obviously, you're trying to keep the plant nice and rounded. So I will go round and do an initial tip stop to all the stems. After that, I will then review it to see whether I need to go any deeper on any stems to balance it off, ready for sort of growing on. Right, okay, so here we are then. This is the plant cut back, and I've stripped off quite a few leaves from it as well, which is what you need to do. I mean, there are a few key things that you need to do. You're stripping leaves off because you want air and light, more importantly light, to get into the body of the plant to enable it to grow sort of really strongly from in its depths, to break all of these inner stems. You want nice strong shoots to grow from, so it's important to get good light down in there. So stripping the leaves back at this stage. At the turn of the year, we are in a situation, of course, where we pass the shortest day, so the light is going to increase, albeit, of course, very slowly initially for the first sort of month or so. But it's important to get as much light as possible into these stems. The next thing that we're looking at is the balance of the plant, and I'm just going round now to see if there is any sort of issue with stems growing out stronger one side. Now I can potentially see, I don't know whether you can see it, a stem that's a little bit strong, and it's this one here. This is growing out and making the plant sort of go a bit over sort of this way to the right as we're looking. So I'm going to have to take that stem down a bit deeper. And all the time you're looking for a plant that's going to be able to grow into a nice oval ball shape. And that's what we're sort of looking to do. So I'm going to first of all just take that one out to see how it goes. I'm going to need 2 fingers, so I'm just going to put the camera down for a moment. Right, I've probably taken not even a centimetre, about 6 or 7 millimetres off of that stem. Let's just see now how that looks. I still think we've got a bit of an issue. I'm going to take, if we look over this side, these are all a bit shorter than this prime stem that's sticking out on the other side. So I'm going to take that one down a joint as well. And by a joint here, you can clearly see there's the stop, and you've got the little joint break going out there. Well, there's another break going out sort of 1 joint below it, which is about 5 millimetres. So I'm going to go down a bit more. It's facing upwards, so the one below it would be sort of the other side and deeper, which is what you want, which is what's going to create the ball shape. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to take that one down there. Okay, so I've taken a bit off that one. And I've taken another slice off that one. So altogether I've taken about 1 centimetre off that one. And that's much more balanced now. I can go all around the plant and every side looks more or less the same. The breaks are all at a similar distance. The stems are all uniform from around the whole plant. So I went a bit deeper on this one to balance it up with the ones on the other side. I've cut this one down to try and balance it off on this side. This side is shorter, so I've had to take this down, and I may actually even take another stem of this one off. This is a real problem stem. You can see it's a real tough boy, this one. Really strong growth, plus the fact that this is sticking out and you don't want it going out that way. That's what you're known as a sort of outer growth point, and you do not want those. So I'm going to take that one as well. Yep, so there we are. I've taken that down then probably well over 1 centimetre, probably getting on for 15 millimetres that in the end, to balance it off with the other side. And I'm much happier with that now. That's very uniform all the way round, and I'm quite happy with that. But that's quite a deep stop, so that branch there will probably come back a bit slower to all the rest of it. But I know all the rest of it should easily come back through within the sort of 5.5 months that we've got to the show. So, you know, that's the important thing. Now, the other thing, if you do get some very shallow stems, some very young stems that are just beginning to break through, you can leave those because, of course, they will grow straight on. They haven't been tipped, so they will balance out. It's possible that in the long term, they will flower before the other stems. But as I say, it's always good to have flowers ahead of a show rather than them be too late. So any like really deep inner stems that are just beginning to shoot out, I've got one there. I will let that grow in order to catch up with the stopped stems. So the bulk of them you do stop, but any that are really deep, I sort of leave. There's a young one there that's just breaking. There's nothing you can do too much about that. A couple of other important points, of course, is that the plant is very dry, as has already been stated. They won't get stressed at this time of year. There's no light or warmth for them to get stressed over. And a clean knife between the stopping of each plant. So they're the important things. So it's business as usual with that sort of thing, really. But that's a good plant. And as you can see over the back here, I've got a good number of stock plants. I haven't got many left to do. This is like the Regal end, so we can have a good look at that now. That one can sit back in its place, but it's great to have a bit of room. Of course, cutting these plants back creates a nice bit of room. That one's still to be done, as is that one. That one is as well, though it's a bit smaller. That one got a good chop back in the sort of September time. That one there, that's got stopped. I stopped that, I think, just before Christmas Eve, and that was last year's best Regal in the national show. You can look back to see it in full bloom. If you look back at the PAGS show winners video, if you go back to June, And that, you know, that stayed quite nice. I give that's really quite tight. I mean, it is a very old plant now, probably about 6 years old. Now, the one big problem that we've had with all of this rain that we've had really since the start of autumn, since September, is that it has had a price. I have probably lost about half a dozen plants, 3 or 4 basic zonals, and I've lost probably 2 or 3 of my miniatures. Anything sort of relatively tight obviously becomes a little bit of a cropper because the damp just gets in there, and once you get damp really in and onto the stems, particularly of the zonal types, there really is no way back. You just have to get rid of the plants. It's just that same old thing. If you get anything with some dead or dying leaves, get rid of them. And here's a sort of some casualties of this one I've clearly not done the job with. If you get any dead or dying leaves, you really do need to go around regularly and get them off. Now this is quite standard, the reddening edge of the leaves. This will become more prominent now over the coming months as we start to hit spring, where we do get this big variation in temperature. You will start to get the reddening of the leaves. But when you haven't got too many, just take them off. You don't want the plant expending energy on sort of, you know, rubbish leaves that will have to come off anyway. So we'll just get rid of those. And that's had quite a good tidy up. Now, the good thing with a lot of sort of drier weather in the last week or so, I've been able to get the greenhouse open. I mean, I've got the windows shut at the moment just purely because I'm doing this video. But it's important to ventilate your greenhouse when you're getting very damp conditions like this. Now, if you remember going back to last year when we moved, we're just coming up to the first anniversary of us moving actually. I said that I knew in the winter that we weren't going to get a great deal of sunlight on this greenhouse. And I think that is one of the problems with this greenhouse. It's not drying out so much during the day. And I think this is why I'm having so many problems you know, with the sort of damp. You know, some of my plants have succumbed to it. It is quite a damp greenhouse, and I think certainly looking forward to the future, I will have to consider probably growing less zonals and a few more regals. I mean, I don't necessarily mind that so much, but yeah, this sort of atmosphere is not good for zonal pelargoniums. Because the damp gets on the stems, you get botrytis, you get rot back. I mean, I'm on them a lot, so these are in pretty tidy condition. Any little hint of, you know, dead or dying leaves, I've been coming around and getting them off. So the plants aren't in too bad a condition, but some of them, the damp has just really, you know, doesn't sort of dissipate even when I'm fully venting. All I get is a little bit of sunshine in the morning and a little bit in the afternoon. I'm getting some there in the corner now as the sun goes round the other side of the garage. But other than that, I don't get much. So I'm probably getting a little bit, about an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, and that's really it. If we had another look through the glass house then, one thing I didn't mention last time is that you must continue to do a bit of feeding with the water, a bit of liquid feed with your watering, just to keep them ticking over. It's quite important to do that. I've tried to keep my plants clean, but every time I walk round, I always see a yellow leaf or two. There's one on a Stella that I've just taken off. The weather has been shockingly damp. Bicolours, this is Bicolour Stella, Mrs May last. Now bicolours do not like the winter, primarily because they like it to be ideally a bit warmer. So keep your bicolours very, very dry, and your tricolours. Ideally they could do with a few more degrees. I mean, I keep a minimum of about 4 or 5 in here, 4 or 5 centigrade. Ideally they would like to have it a bit warmer. So if you can afford it, maybe turn your heating up. Of course, Regals like it cooler, so it's a balancing act with all the different types of pelargonium that there are. A few more stock Regals up this end. The dwarfs are all looking good. Dwarfs I never have a problem with. Slight yellowing leaf here. They all got watered this morning, actually. So there we are. Everything's not looking too bad. I mean, considering the shockingly wet conditions that we've had, I don't think the plants are looking too bad. As I say, I've had to dispose of a few, but in the main, I think I've been relatively lucky. Okay, so there we have it for now. I mean, the key things are ventilate, ventilate, ventilate. When you get the chance, when the weather's a bit drier like it is today, you've got to get your glass house open, get some air moving round it. Very, very important. So that's just about it from me today. I hope you've enjoyed this little episode. I'll just say I wish you all the very best for 2020. I'll see you again probably in a few weeks' time when we'll have to start thinking about stopping some of the other types. 18 weeks, I think, is probably in February at some stage, so we'll have a look at some of the plants then. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you again soon.